Welcome to the 10th chapter of the book of First Kings. The Queen of Sheba tests Solomon. A lot of people over the history of the time since this have tried to figure out exactly who this Queen of Sheba was, where Sheba was, and the Ethiopians have claimed Sheba came from Ethiopia. If it would have been Ethiopia, it would have said Ethiopia, because Ethiopia was a word that was used a lot. But it doesn't. What does it use? The Vasilisa queen we have from basil plant, the basil king, Vasilevs. It says Sava. And the Sava, we know what this is from a man who wrote at the time of Christ. His name was Strabo, and he wrote a geography, went all over the Mediterranean world. And he went to this place that's called Sava, and the people were the Savians, and it is today Yemen. Now, a lot of Bible dictionaries will say that it's Yemen, but the Ethiopians over here want to claim it's there. But you can see right here, Sabah, down at the bottom, capital was Sabata, that it said this was a incense trade route. So where did it go? It went up here through Arabia, Medina, Mecca, went through by Mecca, up into Israel, right south of Jerusalem. That was the trade route. And then later the Romans went down there. This is called Arabia Felix by the Romans. Now, what does this man called Strabo have to say? I have to turn on my light here and I'll read. This comes from the Loeb Library, book on Strabo's geography, 7 volumes. And it's Greek on one page and English translation on the other. And I'm not translating it, I'm just reading what Strabo had to say. He says in one place in his 16.4.18 to 19, bordering upon these people is the very fertile country of the Sabaeans, a very large tribe in whose country myrrh and frankincense and cinnamon are produced. And on the coast is found balsam, as also another kind of herb, a very fragrant smell, which quickly loses its fragrance. There are also sweet-smelling palms and reeds, and serpents, a span in length, which are dark red in color, can leap even as far as a hare, and inflict an incurable bite. On account of the abundance of fruits, the people are lazy and easygoing in their modes of life. Most of the populace sleep on the roots of trees which they have cut out of the ground. Those who live close to one another receive, in continuous succession, the loads of aromatics and deliver them to their next neighbors, as far as Syria and Mesopotamia. And when they are made drowsy by the sweet odors, they overcome the drowsiness by inhaling the incense of asphalt and goat's beard, whatever that is. The city of the Sabaeans, Mariva, is situated upon a well-wooded mountain, and it has a king who is authority in lawsuits and everything else. But it is not lawful for him to leave the palace, or if he does, the rabble, in accordance with some oracle, stone him to death on the spot. Both he himself and those about him live in effeminate luxury, but the masses engage partly in farming and partly in the traffic of aromatics, both the local kinds and those from Ethiopia. To get the latter, they sail across the straits. Right here you see it, right across the straits. I lost the place here. In leathern boats. They have these aromatics in such abundance that they use cinnamon and cassia and others instead of sticks and firewood. In the country of the Sabaeans is also found larimum, a most fragrant incense. From their trafficking, both the Sabaeans and the Geraeans have become richest of all, and they have a vast equipment of both gold and silver articles, such as couches and tripods and bowls, together with drinking vessels, and very costly houses. For doors and walls and ceilings are variegated with ivory and gold and silver, set with precious stones. So there's other places in Strabo's geography that it mentions the Sabaeans. So you can see that they had a rich at the time of the Romans. And this time here of Solomon, I don't know, what would be maybe 600 or 700 years earlier, but time in the Middle East doesn't change a whole lot of things. So the queen of Saba heard the name of Solomon. Sheba, I put because everybody knows the Queen of Sheba, so I went along with the King James, but we don't have to. And Saba. She heard the name of Solomon and the name of Kiriu, and came to test him with enigmasi. There's enigma, comes from that word, our English word derivative. And she came to Jerusalem with an exceedingly heavy force, and you can see it wasn't that far, and camels lifting aromatics, exactly what Strabo mentions, and exceedingly much gold, again, much valuable stone. And she went to King Solomon and spoke to him all as much as was in her heart. And Solomon explained to her all the words of her questions. I put questions in italics. There was not a word being overlooked by the king which he did not explain to her. And the queen of Saba beheld all the intellect of Solomon. Now, he was very intelligent, knew all sorts of things about animals and plants it mentioned earlier. And the house which he built, and the foods for Solomon, and the form of his servants, and the position of his liturgon. The liturgy comes from that, the ministers, and their clothes, and his wine servers, and his whole burnt offering, which he offered in the house of the Lord. So Solomon shows her the house somehow. And she was, I added, besides herself. Beside herself would mean she was next to herself, which she couldn't be. Besides herself is the correct spelling. And she said to King Solomon, well, the word is true which I heard in my land concerning the word about you, and concerning your intellect. I trusted not in the one speaking to me until of which I came, and my eyes have seen. And behold, it's not according to half, as they reported to me. Emisi, hemi, comes from that word. A hemi is half. You have added wisdom and good things over all the report which I heard in my land. Wisdom and intellect. And I've mentioned many times, you're probably tired of hearing it, but for somebody that's new, the difference between wisdom and intellect. And intellect was, if you know that this animal coming towards you that's black and has a white stripe down its back is a skunk. And wisdom tells you, run like hell. So he has added wisdom along with the intellect, the good things over all the report which I heard in my land. Blessed are your wives, and blessed are these your servants, standing before you continually, and hearing your intellect. May the Lord your God be blessing whom he wants by you, to put you upon the throne of Israel. Because the Lord loves agapan, from agape, loves Israel, to establish it into the eon, and to set you for king over them, to execute judgment in righteousness, to be a good judge, and in their equity. And she gave to Solomon 120 talents of gold, of which they had abundance of, and exceedingly much spices, of which they had much of, and valuable stone. Ethiopia, I don't believe, had all of what they had there in Sava. There had not come as those spices yet in multitude, which the queen of Sava gave to King Solomon. Now, you might run across Ethiopians or people that have heard, maybe in certain churches, that Queen of Sheba was from Ethiopia. But here, I'm going back with Strabo, the time of Christ. So where is their history that Ethiopia, that this Saba, it's mentioned in the Greek, Saba, and it's mentioned in Strabo 2,000 years ago they wrote, and it's here. Where is Ethiopia? And if it was Ethiopia, why did it say Ethiopia? I mean, Ethiopia is a huge country. It'd be like today, if you didn't want to use Russian, you use some country named Harry or something. That doesn't make any sense. So, Sabah. And the ship of Hiram, now he was back up there in Lebanon. The ship carrying the gold from out of Ophir brought, now this Ophir is thought to be right up in here. This would be Ophir. So now the ships, see, here's the Red Sea, and this is the Gulf of Aqaba, part of the Red Sea. Right up here at the very tip is two little tributaries. I'm sorry, this is the Red Sea. The two little gulfs. The Gulf of Aqaba is right here, and then that's the one that goes to Egypt. Right at the tip of Gulf of Aqaba is Ezion-Geber and Eliat, which are part of Israel, which it mentions as Solomon had taken that area, and we did that, I think, mentioned that in the last chapter. So the ship of Hiram carrying the gold from out of Ophir. Now, I'm not sure if it was Hiram, if that was the case, of how his ships would have gotten down there, because, well, Ethiopia is way up here. And they generally went out into the Mediterranean. So that is I question that, but the ship, it might be talking about a different, maybe Ophir someplace else. Was carrying gold from out of Ophir, and he brought exceedingly much timbers and valuable stone. So you would think that, well, if they're going one, it's a transfer from gold and then the back and forth. And the king made Hiram, I guess, maybe no Solomon, the hewn timbers for supports of the house of the Lord and the house of the king. And he made stringed instruments. Now, I believe this is the wood that came from, and this is the ship from Hiram. I was thinking the Queen of Sheba brought it, but not. And lutes for the singers. You can add that English derivative. Add that to your English derivative book. Oh, these were ode. They were singers. There had not come such unhewn timbers unto the land, nor was seen somewhere until this day. Now, it could have been this wood, some of this wood came from Sheba, or Sava, rather. And King Solomon gave to the queen of Sava all as much as she wanted, and as much as she asked, outside of all which was given to her through the hand of King Solomon. And she returned and came into her land, she and her servants. And was the weight of the gold that came to Solomon in 1 year 666 talents of gold, apart from the tribute of the ones submitting, all the other people other countries that were giving money as a tribute, and the merchants taxing, I suppose it's talking about, making trade. And there's a emporon, merchants, and we have an emporium, place where you sell. And all the kings of the other side of the Jordan and the satraps of the land, and these gave money. And King Solomon made 200 spears of gold, hammered out. So they have hammers and they beat it and make them into shields. Of 600 weights of gold was used for the one spear. And he made 300 oblong shields of gold, hammered out. Again, it's hammered out. 3 minas of gold were used for the one oblong shield. And the king put them in the house of the forest of Lebanon, his house. And the king made a great ivory throne and gilded it in an unadulterated gold. I tried to find a good representation of what the throne might look like. I went on the internet and looked at all the pictures for the Solomon's throne, and they were just horrible. Wasn't even close to the description in the Bible. People had cats on it and different kinds of animals, lambs, and didn't have the right amount of stairs. Didn't show any of the ivory, and it was just nothing. I couldn't find it. I spent an hour looking. I couldn't find it. I was hoping I could show you a picture and give you an idea what it might look like, but I couldn't find it, unfortunately. But this throne was ivory. Now, ivory comes from tusks of the elephant. That's elephantinone. There's a derivative, elephantinone, from elephant, ivory. Now, you couldn't have one solid piece of the throne. You had to be pieces, and somehow they took these pieces of ivory and formed it into some type of a throne, chair. And they gilded it in unadulterated gold. And it must have been very beautiful. All this ivory and then gold around it in different ways. With 6 stairs to the throne. Now, 6 stairs to me would be 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. These pictures have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the 6 is the platform where the throne is. Well, I don't think so. I think it has 6 stairs, and but what do I know? But the upper part had calves from out of the places behind it to the throne. The other pictures, I didn't see any pictures that had calves on the side of the throne, on the upper part. And there were handrails on this side and that side upon the place of the chair. Here he calls it a cathedrus. The whole thing was a throne with all the stairs, and the chair at the very top was called the cathedrus. We have a cathedral, comes from that word, where the chair of a important person resides. And 2 lions standing by the handrails. And there were 12 lions standing upon the 6 stairs. So on this side and that side. So that means 6 on one side, 6 on the other side. And the 2 lions standing by the handrails. Well, there was one picture that was fairly close that did have the 2 lions. I didn't see the calves anywhere, but then these lions were at the top. 2 lions standing by the handrails. The picture had these lions, the 2 of them, way, way larger than the lions that were 6 of them on both sides of the stairs. There was not such in any kingdom. And all the vessels used by Solomon were of gold. That's in the temple, not boats. And the bathing tubs were of gold. And all the vessels of the house of the forest of Lebanon, that's Solomon's home, were completely of gold. There was not silver, for it was not thought anything in the days of Solomon. Wow. Silver's not considered anything. Or it wasn't considered. I added the anything to give it a little bit of a meaning. Then it changes a little. For a ship of Tarshish belonged to King Solomon upon the sea, with the ships of Hiram. Now, Tarshish, we have a few places that it's mentioned. Nobody really knows for sure about Tarshish either. But in Psalm 72:1, it says, Kings of Tarshish and the Ions shall bring gifts. The kings of Arabia and Saba will come forward with gifts. That's in Psalms. Another place where we find out about Tarshish is in Jonah 1:3. Jonah was fleeing from God's command for him to go to Nineveh and tell the people to repent. So what did he do? He got a ticket for going to Tarshish on a boat from the city of Joppa, which is in Israel. So if it was going out from Joppa, that means it was in the Mediterranean. So Tarshish was someplace in the Mediterranean. It could have been almost anywhere, Africa, but I don't think it was in the Arabian Peninsula. So this boat went out, ship came every 3 years loaded, and that had turned and hewn stones. So a turned stone is something that's put on a lathe type thing. It's turned, or it could be flat like a bowl. That's turning it this way, or you could turn it this way, make a spindle, turn it this way to make a bowl, and that is turning. Hewing, the next one, hewn, is to take an axe and chop it and make it into something that you want it to be. Now, the reason I'm mentioning this is because earlier in the book of Exodus, it was describing the lampstand, and it said it was turned. That means it was on a lathe sort of thing, and each piece was turned, and you had one stem that was all turned on a machine, so it was a solid gold, and then it had 6 turned pieces coming off, and I showed the picture when I was there. It's vertical, and then it has 6 going out, and they're straight. You see the pictures of the what is it called? The menorahs are all curved, and it couldn't have been that, because those were all not turned. They were either cast or fabricated, not the same as turned, solid piece that was turned. And Solomon was magnified above all the kings of the earth in riches and intellect. And Pluto is riches, and that's what the word for the planet Pluto comes from, reads rich. And all the kings of the earth sought the face of Solomon to hear acoustics, his intellect, which the Lord put in his heart. The Lord gave him the intellect. There's a man that is working on the Romanian translation of the Apostolic Bible, Marian Chuka, and he has intellect. He speaks many languages. He's a PhD in mathematics, and he's translating the Greek. Just amazing. And God gave him this intellect, and he's using it wisely. And you can find that on our website, apostolicbible.com, under translations and what he's done so far. So each the people, the kings, each brought his gifts to him, items of silver, items of gold, and clothes, balsam, and balsam was mentioned, I believe, by Strabo, spices, Strabo, horses and mules, and another part in Strabo it talks about the Sabaeans had many animals like horses and mules. Now I have this highlighted. You can add it to your English derivatives book. I just think it's kind of a funny thing that, remember I said emi is half, a hemi. So we see that hemi right here, emio, emi is half, emi. And then the onus, well, you know what ono is? That's an ass or a donkey. So this actually literally means a half-ass. And I thought that's kind of funny, but that's, we call it a mule. We don't call them half-ass. At least we don't call the animal that. We call it a mule, and so I put in mule. But that's what the word means. Interesting in Greek, seeing these things. According to year by year, so they brought all these things. And Solomon brought armata, chariots, and epis, horsemen, and there were to him 1,400 chariots, 12,000 horsemen. And he put them in the cities of the chariots and with the king in Jerusalem. And the king put the silver in Jerusalem as stones, and the cedars he put as the sycamine trees, which were like a scrub oak or something, in the plain in multitude. And the exiting of the horsemen of Solomon was from out of Egypt. That's where they received the horses, apparently. And from out of Ekue, wherever that was. the merchants of the king took merchandise from out of Equa and barter. And there ascended an Exodus is a book of the Bible, an exiting from out of Egypt, Arma, a chariot, armament, 600 pieces of silver, what they paid for it, and a horse for 150 pieces of silver. And thus to all the kings of the Hittites, to the kings of Syria, by their hand they came forth, and they also purchased these things, probably the same price. So here we have the height of Solomon's kingdom. But things change, and chapter 11 will show you what did change. You have to find out. You'll have to join us in the next video seminar. I hope you do. Till then, God bless.